Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan, in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my Aunt Lori Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, Bruce is back in California training a crew on the B-17 Flying Fortress. We also learn about the fire at the King Milling and the first mention of that girl, Bruce's future wife, Margaret.
A historical moment
Mom.
on the podcast. Yeah. Before we get started, though, we have a few corrections and additions. I have a couple updates way back from 1942 about people who sent Bruce Christmas presents. So some digging into the ledger showed that Jerry Devine, I think I'm saying that correctly, I don't know, and Paul Rickert, they were people that worked at the Lowell Light Power Plant with Frank. So they were people that had sent Bruce some presents, so maybe his coworkers. And then Rosella Yiter had a son named Sam Yiter, and I found him quite a bit in the ledger. Apparently he had quite a fun war
He's the
story.
first Eagle Scout in Lowell.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
really? I didn't see
Yes.
that part.
Yeah.
He had, he was, I don't know, he was in the service too, and
Yep.
then had a whole big thing over in
Yep.
where he was. So I'm not doing that story any justice, but I'm guessing that since she had a son in the service, maybe Sam and Bruce knew each other, so he knew about the same age, or maybe she was just sending presents to other soldiers. I don't know, but either way, that's who she is. But
Yeah.
if, anybody else knows these people, of course. But you had another one too, right?
Yeah,
Dale?
I have a update on Rum Crowd. We were debating, was it last episode? I can't remember. Anyway,
Yeah.
Anyway, I just by chance typed it in, and I got this. Rum Crowd may refer to a group of people who are considered odd or eccentric.
Wow.
So it doesn't have anything to do with alcohol?
No, we were thinking,
Yeah.
to me, that makes more sense.
Yes, yeah, sure.
So he's just
Because-
getting his rest with the rum crowd, hanging out with the oddballs, huh?
Yeah.
Because
Oh.
Mitch says Dad didn't really drink, that he knew
Grandpa
about anyway.
didn't.
Yeah, or Grandpa, yeah.
Huh.
So-
Okay. Well, it does make more sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But
And I
didn't
asked
know
about the Rickerts. I do
Yeah.
know that Paul is a grandpa, but I think he's a grandpa of Jay and the rest of the Rickerts that are here with Rickert Electric. I'm waiting for verification, but yeah, I did talk to. I
Okay.
did know that Paul he's a relation to all the Rickerts that are here now. in
All
Lowell.
right.
Yep.
that. Okay.
Connecting the dots.
Yes,
and,
we are.
And I did find out from cousin Kathy Hosef that somebody, who did I say was delivered, that Shep delivered, Dr. Shepard delivered a relative of ours. Let's see.
You thought he delivered you.
No, I don't. I knew
No?
he didn't deliver me.
Oh, okay.
He delivered. She said Myra's mom was delivered by Doc Shepard at the home on their house on Main Street in Hudson, November 1938. And I do know that Sister Marty said she was delivered by Dr. Shepard. Mike was delivered. Susan was delivered. We don't know about Mitch, Kevin, and Lori. I'm pretty sure I was not, but
Okay.
like I said, I don't recognize. You said last time, did you recognize his face when you were coming out? I'm like, nope, I
Did
didn't.
I say that on air?
You did.
Oh,
You
okay.
did. But he did, in fact, deliver children, so that was good.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. And some of the McMahon children
yes,
as well.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
That's awesome. Great. Well, we love these. We love any additions that we find later on, especially because, most of the time when we're recording these, we're like, we don't know. And then later, people will inform us, or I'll find them later or something. So this is great.
Perfect.
If you know anybody that we don't know and you hear their name on this podcast, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we'll put it in for sure.
Sounds great.
And of course, we are now, Bruce is now a commissioned officer, and he's got his wings, and he makes a quick stop in Salt Lake City just to get his assignment, and it turns out he's heading back to California to Blythe Army Airfield in Blythe, California. So, Dale, what do you know about Blythe Army Airfield?
Well, the Blythe Army Air Base was first used in May 1942 when it was transferred to the 4th Air Force as part of the Desert Training Center. Its mission was to train United States Army and Army Air Force units and personnel to live and fight in the desert, to test and develop suitable equipment, and develop tactical doctrines, techniques, and training methods. It was a key training facility for units engaged in combat during the 1942 and 1943 North American campaign. Mm-hmm. For the next 6 months, Blythe Air Base was the only Army airfield that gave air support to infantry and armored troops in training maneuvers. By the end of 1942, 3 more new airfields, Thermal, Rice, and Desert Center Army airfields, were built to support the Desert Training Center desert maneuvers, and Blythe Army Air Base wasn't needed for the Army desert exercises. Blythe's new role was changed to the training of heavy bombardment combat crews before they were deployed overseas. In 1943, when Bruce walked through the gates, the base had over 7,500 personnel, which was twice the population of the city of Blythe.
Wow, okay.
The only community with a 100-mile radius. So they couldn't just go into town and have a cocktail somewhere. They had 75 heavy bombers, 650 buildings. The 34th and 398th Heavy Bomb Group flew the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator while training at Blythe Army Air Base. Both bomb groups were the last to occupy Blythe Air Force Base before being deployed overseas. This is really interesting. The base was advertised as the world's healthiest air base due to its location in the Colorado River Valley. The desert environment around Blythe has very low humidity, which can be beneficial for people with respiratory issues. The elevation of the base provided a slightly thinner atmosphere, which could also be considered beneficial for lung health. The region experiences a high number of sunny days throughout the year, which can positively impact the mood and vitamin D levels. So it was known as the world's healthiest
Oh, they're
base.
trying to sell it. They're really trying to sell it.
But yeah, by April 1944, only a housekeeping force was assigned to the base. By July 1944, the field was abandoned by the Army and declared surplus. On the base during the time that all this was going on, 126 airmen were killed by related accidents. Wow. After the war, the air base was made into a civilian airport, which is still in use today. All of the buildings except for the main hangar were dismantled or torn down. Very few building foundations and traces of the World War II air base exist due to extensive farming done after the war. So I do have one picture of the hangar that's still seen there. Okay. There were some old pictures I found, so those will be on our video production.
Cool.
Interesting.
He did call it godforsaken country last time on the last episode. There really was nothing there, I guess. All right.
World's healthiest base.
Okay. Well, we'll see what Bruce has to say about it.
126 people would disagree with that.
Yeah, true.
Well, Bruce is definitely excited about the Flying Fortress part of his time in Blythe. He's excited to get in it, and he writes this in a letter to his parents on February 16th, 1943, in his own words.
Tuesday night. Dear Mother and Dad, just came back from the Officers Club and will write a few lines before I go to bed. Flying is really swell in this new Flying Fortress. They are the F series and the latest ones out. Tomorrow at 6, we'll go on the bomb range and drop a dozen or so bombs. Then we'll do a little aerial gunnery and come back around noon. Today we made some pretty good bomb hits, and our aerial gunnery was good. I don't know exactly how long I'll be here. However, at the outside, it won't be for over a month. Then I'll either be sent east to Kansas City or west to the state of Washington. At this next field, I'll probably stay another month or so, and then I should get a leave to come home. I'll take the airliner if I can't get a bomber home. However, now that I'm flying B-17s, I should be able to get a ferry home. About all we do is fly. We average about 6 hours a day, and that's not tough because these ships are sure comfortable. The food is good, and our quarters are okay. Of course, now we have to pay for everything, but as soon as I get my first month's pay, I'll send at least $100 a month home. By the way, how's the latest grandson coming along? Gosh, you'll sure have a bunch of kids before long. Only wish I had an offspring or two that could grow up with their grandma and grandpa. Well, it's never too late. When this mess is straightened out, maybe I'll see about getting me a couple. Do you still have all the snow? It seems so funny to get on the train in Salt Lake City with snow on the ground, and 2 days later be where it was so hot again. If I'd been in a B-17, it would have only been a matter of hours. In fact, if I headed this baby home, it would make it in about 6 hours. You can see from this that these 17s are fast. Don't have much more to say now, only I love you and I miss you both so much. Guess I can wait a few weeks longer, though. All my love and prayers, your loving son, J. Bruce.
Oh, so he did have a couple of kids, or 6.
Laura and I are glad he went past the couple.
Yeah, yes, we are.
A couple times 3. But yeah, he's definitely got kids on his mind, which is funny. Well, we'll talk about that later. But speaking of Bruce's future family, 2 of which we have here, we have Letters Home history being made because this is Bruce's first mention of his future wife. Now, we found her in the ledger before this, and obviously we've told stories, but to my knowledge, this is the first letter that I have seen that has her name in it that he wrote. So this is from a letter he wrote on February 20th, in his own words.
Saturday night. Dear Mother and Dad, yesterday I sure received a raft of letters. Dad's, Burns, Helen's, Raj and Veda's, one from Marg Allen, and a bunch of airmails from Dad. I'm flying the graveyard run tonight, so we go up at 12 and finish at 6 tomorrow morning. That's a long time, but there's so much to do it doesn't get monotonous. Every hour or so I let the co-pilot take it, and I go back visiting the radio man in his compartment. There's a lot of room back there, and I can even write a letter or so. When we are on a bomb run, I have to fly, but then it's with the gyro, the AFCE. And all that entails is just sitting there making a sensitivity check every so often. The ship would fly straight and level until all the gas ran out if I left it on AFCE. You can see from this that this type of flying isn't at all like the old days.
Oh, so just a brief little mention of Marg Allen, no big deal. I don't know if this is like the first time she sent him a letter. We don't know, but it's the first time he's mentioned it.
Right.
But he's writing letters on the plane while it's flying? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
He could get a letter done? So, Dale, do you know what any of this means? Gyro Pilot, AFCE? What did you find out?
Of course
Yes,
he does.
I do.
Of course he does.
And
How can he write a letter on the plane?
And
What
I'm
is
not
this
going to
about?
say gyro today. I'm going to say gyro. Gyro Pilot is an automatic pilot that uses gyroscopes.
Oh, see, now we got to make sure. He's going to make sure.
To maintain an aircraft's altitude and course. During World War II, gyroscopes were used in a variety of aircraft systems, including autopilots, gun sights, and the V-1 flying bomb. The Sperry Corporation developed the first gyroscope autopilot in 1912. The B-17 Flying Fortress had an autopilot system that allowed the pilot to switch control of the aircraft to the bombardier when they bombed. Gyroscope is a Greek, gyro meaning round and scope meaning to look. So around to look. Now I have a kind of a technical definition of this, so I'll just read it for giggles, because everybody will go, what? Yeah, gyroscope. A mechanical gyroscope consists of a wheel set in a special frame. The wheel sits on a bar called the axle. Once the wheel has been set in motion, it spins around the axle. The axle is attached to a ring called a gimbal. The gimbal is in turn attached to another gimbal, which is attached to the base. The gimbals can move in such a way that allowed the axle to keep pointing in the same direction no matter how the base moves. Comprehend that.
Yeah.
I'll have a picture of it on our
Gotcha.
video. Now, the FCE stands for Automatic Flight Control Equipment.
Okay.
The
The AFCE is like a autopilot, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So the lead plane, which your grandfather and of course Lori and Mitch's dad was the lead in a lot of stuff. The lead plane was on autopilot almost all the time they were on a mission. This provided a stable plane to try to fly the formation on the right path. No quick turns. The lead pilot made small adjustments with the autopilot controls to routinely fly the plane. At the proper time, the bombardier engages the bomb sight to the autopilot with a switch to allow the lining of the bomb sight to hit the target. Meanwhile, the pilot, which is Bruce, maintains a constant speed and altitude. The automatic control panel, was located on the instrument control pedestal between the pilots, below the throttles and propeller controls. The AFCE could be reached in flight by pilot's right hand for AFCE setup and adjustment of the aircraft's flying controls. It was also used to transfer the aircraft's lateral flight control to the bombardier and the Norden bomb sight during the bomb run. The Norden bomb sight was what set him. So when they were ready to bomb, they just switched over, and the bombardier took over the flight of the plane with the AFCE.
Okay.
And I'll have a picture of the actual panel that shows the AFCE and the switching over.
So you could just flip this on and write a letter.
And I'm sure some of our listeners have been in possibly a B-17 like I have.
Yeah.
Am I the
lucky.
only
I
one
have
here?
Yeah, you're lucky. That'd been
Okay,
awesome.
so the next time they come to town, we're going to have to go. All three
Yeah.
will have to
Well,
go.
yeah.
Because it's a really, I was very surprised at the Navigator's desk. I was very surprised at how large, and it felt really big. I mean, it just felt like it was large.
Wow.
Roomy inside. Not by where the pilot was so much. I mean, that was pretty, lots of instruments. But back where the Navigator was, seemed,
Wow.
roomy.
Did you get up into the plane all right when you had to swing up through the little opening in the bottom? Or?
They had a nice little step stool.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And so we'll have to, when the next time they come, we'll
Oh,
have
that'd
to
be
go.
great. I'd love to do
Yeah.
that.
Wow,
We'll have to
okay.
do that.
Yeah, it seems like this 17 episodes in, and I'm just now learning that Aunt Lori has been in a B-17.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
That's it.
Well, interesting. All right, well, this letter keeps going beyond just autopilot, so let's keep going with this letter in his own words.
Well, Dad, at Tulare it was black widow spiders, and here it's scorpions, Gila monsters, and sidewinder rattlers here. One thing this army is doing is to condition me against the fear of these pests. Yesterday they killed 2 rattlers outside the BOQ, and a flight engineer in one of my friend's crews was laid up a week from a bite from the Gila. You rarely see any of these things in the daytime, but at night the desert gets so cold they seek warm buildings, etc. I did see a Gila run across in front of my window the other day, but naturally they're a pretty shy lizard. If one happens to be in your room or in some of your baggage, they will bite, and it causes a nasty infection, necessitating needle bleeding in the infirmary. Why I tell you these things, I don't know, except to show you that life isn't boring in the desert, and also that I'm not as panicky about snakes, etc., as I used to be.
This is so gross. I love this description of all the bugs in the California desert. So I don't know if they're selling that when it comes to the healthiest place at all. You could get bit by a Gila monster. Did Grandpa really hate snakes? Like, did you all know about Bruce's
yeah.
He wasn't
hate?
he wasn't
really?
a fan.
Not a fan.
Oh,
Not a fan.
really? Okay, so he didn't really get over this
That
fear
fear.
of
No.
his pests. But I wouldn't want to be around black widow spiders, scorpions. No, thank you. No.
Ah.
So he hated. This was the thing. He hated snakes.
I think
Yeah.
I'd like the Gila monster picture on the website. I don't know what they
Yeah,
look
we're
like.
gonna need one of those.
Yeah, I don't
we're
know
gonna
what
need
they
to
look
find it. I think it is. I think you do have one on the
Yeah,
primary sources.
on the PDF files, I got
We're gonna need to
a
put that
picture
on
of
the
each
YouTube.
of them around the letters.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So-
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, things I didn't learn about Grandpa Bruce. He did not like snakes. All these things he's doing. He's not afraid of getting in a plane, flying a plane, bombing places, but a rattlesnake that'll stop him right in his tracks. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're going to finish this particular letter. Still keeps going with Bruce worrying about his mother. So, in his own words.
Last night, I got to worrying about you at home and wondering if you were still okay. I've been away almost a year, and all I have to go on are your letters and those of the families. And like you, Mother, sometimes I've wondered if you wouldn't keep something of this nature from me so as not to worry me. Remember how you used to accuse me of the same thing? Well, if you do keep things like that from me, it's not fair, because so help me, I've given you the straight dope since I've been here. Maybe I've neglected to mention a few accidents we've had, but we don't even mention those in here. Well, I'd better get dressed now, and I'll be thinking of you while I'm up there churning along. All my love and prayers, your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. This is a very screwy letter. I'll do better next time.
Yeah. It's about autopilot and
I forgot the P.S. Oh my
no,
gosh.
you got it. And, rattlesnakes and all kinds of stuff. This worry that Bruce has about Lotta will come up again. So we'll just a little foreshadowing for you. But now it's time for our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell when Bruce wrote these letters. So we're going to start with the war effort. Bruce hints a little bit at this in a letter from February 21st, 1943. So in his own words.
Sunday night. Dear Mother and Dad, this is the first spare minute I've had in quite a few days. Tomorrow starts another phase of my flying. Today I was given my crew a Flying Fortress. It's brand new and is the B-17 F series, the latest thing. From now on we'll be together constantly and we'll live almost like a big family. There are 3 commissioned officers, Navigator, Bombardier, and co-pilot, and 6 enlisted men. I'm entirely responsible for the whole crew and the ship. It gives you quite a kick to realize that they are entrusting you with $500,000 worth of equipment and 10 men's lives, including your own. Never fear, though. I believe I can handle the job okay. And above all, remember, I'm going to come through this war in one piece, in spite of hell and high water. I'd like to write Bern and Raj all the dope about this new F-Series, but of course, it's entirely secret, and I'll have to wait until the war's over. Incidentally, the war news has been looking pretty good lately, hasn't it? In the next 6 months, you're going to see some big developments.
He actually did write out the word hell this time, so you know he's serious. He's coming back from the war.
Getting more corrupted.
Maybe. So that's changed in 1943. The casual swearing, he writes it all out. And this is great because Bruce is describing to his family exactly what Dale has been telling us this whole time about his responsibilities as a commissioned officer. So he's like, can you believe they're letting me do all this stuff? I could not find exactly what Bruce was talking about as far as good war news goes, but right around this time, Americans did push back Japanese forces on some Pacific islands, and several German subs were sunk, but that's about all I can find. So I suppose that's good. And I even looked 6 months ahead to see if Bruce was predicting anything. And again, I couldn't quite find anything specific. So I don't know what he was talking about exactly then. But there was some big news in Lowell at the time. And there was, we briefly touched on this in the last episode, but there was a massive fire at King Milling on March 7th, 1943. Dale, what did you find out about this huge tragedy here in Lowell?
I found a great article in the Ledger dated March 11th, 1943, front page. Gave a lot of details about it, so I'll give you some of the highlights. March 7th, 1943 was the greatest loss by fire in Lowell's industrial history. It was over close to $250,000 burnt to the ground with a fire. It is estimated that the amount of wheat destroyed may total as much as 70,000 bushels. The fire was discovered shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning by a couple people that were driving through town. And, of course, the Lowell Fire Department responded immediately and realized that this is going to need more than Lowell. So Ada got involved, Ionia, and a Grand Rapids truck. Luckily, they had a great water supply. The Flat River was right there, so they pulled all the water from the Flat River because they kept putting water on it for the next 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Firemen worked heroically. At times, the flames rose high. Nearby business blocks were greatly endangered, but were saved by the efforts of firemen and also became a favorable wind carried the sparks and embers in a southeasterly direction over the river, so it didn't go over the town. The rest of the main street, which of course had several fires before this one, 1905 and the Woodrow. The other bad thing was it was March, and the weather was 15 degrees below zero at the time when this went on, and windy. So the nearby lunch rooms were serving steaming cups of coffee to the firemen, and many volunteers whose clothes were cold and ice covered with ice were greatly handicapped. Temperatures. Monday morning, the ruins of the mighty structure stood glistening in the sun like a huge ice palace weighted down by the tons of ice. So the whole thing was covered. The water would just freeze as they sprayed on it. And I'll have pictures of a lot of great pictures of that. So the mill, which operated day and night and employed 25 persons, only last fall had installed a new water wheels and a new power plant, one of the finest in the state. And I talked to Jim Doyle this morning about, and they never really knew how the fire started, but they think it was one of the water wheels that wasn't shut off correctly, or some friction started to go on and started the fire. But they never really have pinpointed the exact reason for the fire.
Wow.
At the time of the fire, there were 6,000 barrels of unfilled orders on the books that they had to fill, and neighboring mills, fortunately, were there to cover that. I'll give you just a quick history of the old mill, which was, Mitch and I weren't around by then, but the history of the old mill. The mill building destroyed, known as the Superior Mills, was erected in 1867 and was known as a model mill of some 200 barrels capacity. Think about that. Just 200 barrels of 1860. That was, high tech.
Yeah.
It was operated by a succession of owners and was purchased about 157 years ago from this date ago by the King Milling Company, a corporation composed of Francis King, Charles McCarthy, Reuben Quick, and Frank T. King. Now, the Kings and Reuben Quick, they had the sawmill where our gymnasium was for junior high. The sawmill was right there.
Really?
And when when the wood, lumber kind of died out, they moved into the. So when we were playing on the Ocean Wave and stuff right there, 157 years ago, that was a sawmill.
Sawmill.
Wow.
The very dangerous Ocean Wave. Let's see. And they bought it and they rebuilt the mill for $20,000. In 1896, they acquired the Forest Mill. There was another mill across the river on the east side, east bank of the river. And in 1911, Mr. T.F. Doyle purchased the interest of Charlie McCarthy. So that started the Doyle business being involved. In 1927, the King Milling Company purchased the property of Peckham Furniture Company with water power and converted it into a chicken and stock feed manufacturing plant with a capacity of 250 to 300 railroad cars a year. Let's see, the mill, which turned out flour and self-rising flour and had a capacity of 250 barrels a day, consuming about 250,000 barrels of wheat a year. Present day, and then of course from first generation was T.F. Doyle, the second generation was William Doyle, then the third generation was King and Mike Doyle that we know, and now the fourth generation is the sons of King and Mike, Jim and Brian and Steve. Talking to a couple things. I love this article because on the side there's a thing that says sparks from the fire, and there are accounts that people told that were printed in the paper. And of course, who shows up, do you think?
Wow.
Superintendent F.J. McMahon.
That's right.
Lost no time in seeing to it that all the high-tension wires in the vicinity of the burning mill were disconnected, thus avoiding any likelihood of serious injury to firemen and others. And one other thing I liked was local clothers bought out their stock of gloves and earmuffs for the fire laddies. Local restaurants furnished pots of steaming hot coffee, and Ross Chapel was kept open as a place where firemen could go for warmth and dry their clothing. Several ladies remained on the job to dry their firemen's gloves over the fire.
Wow.
And one other one, everybody was dressed in his Sunday best when the fire alarm was sounded, but no one went home to change his clothes before rendering help.
Oh my gosh.
Palace cleaners will be renovating a lot of suits.
That's what it says.
So at 8 o'clock, the alarm went off, and everybody, Sunday morning, people were going to church. So everybody just ran down there in their Sunday best.
That's cool. That just shows how the whole town sort of pitched in.
And one other thing, talking to Jim Doyle this morning, remember I brought up about when we talked about labor shortage,
Yeah.
that they brought up that they were asking for help to help them help them build as well as pour the
new mill.
silos.
Or silos,
and Jim told me about his dad would go up and pick up farmers after the farmers worked during the day to come in and help them build
After a long day at the farm.
after a long day. That just shows you
Let's
getting the labor.
pour some
We talked
cement.
about that last week.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
man.
did last
How the
episode.
farmers kind of really were called upon to do just all kinds of things at that time.
Wow.
And he said, the cement was made on site. There wasn't no cement trucks that rolled in there.
Sure,
And,
sure,
they
yeah.
had the elevator things. They mixed everything
Oh, wow.
by hand there and then did it. So very interesting. So that's fourth generation now. The fourth generation of Doyle's owned the King Milling Company, and of course they just built a whole new. They poured. We watched, all four of us watched them pour cement for, what did they do, 2 days, and they poured like 4 silos 24/7. They had crews of 100 and some people per shift around the clock to pour that. It was amazing to watch it. They went up in 3 days, I guess.
Yeah, it was
about
quick.
3 days. It was amazing.
It was quick.
Anyway,
Was there any loss of life with that fire?
that wasn't brought up anywhere. I think nowhere have I found any information on anybody.
Okay.
I guess there was a couple. It says George Wood, a volunteer fireman, was overcome by smoke and taken to a Grand Rapids hospital where he was found that his condition was not serious.
Okay.
There was one thing
that's good.
posted in that. So,
Yeah, I can't imagine the silos not being there.
yeah.
So like right after the fire,
Yeah.
it must have looked very
Well,
strange.
it's like when they were building the huge ones at the stoplight. When they were building, you're going, "Oh my gosh, it looks terrible." But now you don't even notice them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notice
They're
them.
just there.
They're just part of it. Wow, that's amazing. So big time Lowell
Yeah. So
event.
I'll have pictures of Superior Mills, and I'll have pictures of the one that burnt down. We got some beautiful colored pictures at the museum.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
put in our video.
That's great. Yeah, and Bruce does talk about this in next couple episodes once the news gets back to him in Blythe. But it's interesting. But the other piece, we didn't read it in this letter, but another, I guess, like lighter note, he's sending this money to his parents, right? And he keeps telling them to save on for an addition to the house and to buy a new bedroom set. Like he really wants them to buy like a new bedroom set, which is kind of funny. But like I'm always, why were they just so obsessed with adding on to the house if they didn't have any kids at home? Like they have all adult grown kids, Frank and Lotta. Like what are they adding on to the house for? They're always talking about
Big
adding on to the
family.
house.
Maybe a big
I
family.
mean, yeah, they have a ton of grandkids, I guess, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
That house has been added on to many, many times.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's amazing to me. But anyway, so they keep talking about it.
It's another
Keep talking
field
about
trip we
adding
need to make.
on. Yep. We're
I
on.
kind of remember it when I went up with the Richmonds and we played with Dirk and Mark and those guys.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like it was kind of a piece here and a piece
Yeah,
there and a
yeah,
piece there,
yeah.
all over the place.
Well,
It
yeah,
looks
we're gonna
really
have
nice
to-
now. It looks really nice. So, yeah.
Had a great view up there, though.
Yeah.
Weren't you telling me they found insulation from that house, like as newspapers from, like around this time,
Yeah,
or was
somebody
it?
talked about that.
Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, it's funny. So just keep thinking, like, oh, just keep adding on. Like, for
Gail.
what? What do you need? Anyway, our last letter today is a long one, so we're going to read it in pieces. It's from March 13th, 1943. So we'll start with Aunt Lori in his own words.
Saturday night. Dear Mother and Dad, I received your letter today, Mother, the one Kitty mailed. You know, it's funny, but I felt you weren't feeling good when I left Douglas. I know it sounds foolish, but if you'll remember, when I talked to you in Salt Lake City, I asked if you were okay. I felt you weren't, and your voice confirmed it. Now your letter comes and you say you were in bed for a few days, so I firmly believe in some degree of telepathy. Well, I'm glad you were sensible and did as Shep said. Because of my uneasiness about you, I wrote that letter 3 letters ago, telling you that if you weren't tip-top, to let me know. Get this, I'll give this army my freedom, all my time, and even my life if need be, but I won't give it one hair off of either of your heads, Dad's especially. I couldn't help that quip.
Bald Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he even mentions this. We read this letter just a few minutes
Yeah,
ago,
that's
obviously. On March 11th, the Ledger reported that Lotta had been sick for 3 weeks, because obviously the Ledger reports such things.
Yeah, it used to.
Yeah, so, but she was improving. So she was sick when Bruce suspected it, back in that letter that you read earlier from February 20th. Lotta died in 1947, so I mean, she wasn't a super healthy person at this time. Right after the war, she passed away. And obviously, before you two were born. Do you ever hear stories about her? 'Cause obviously, you never met her, but like.
No, as a matter of fact, I asked Marty today, Sister Marty, because Marty was the only one born. Marty was 2 when she was, and I know we don't remember ever talking about, Dad ever talking about either one of them. I mean, about Lotta, especially.
Because we've seen pictures, but.
Yeah, yep.
You know, okay. Well, I'm always curious. What was she like? She clearly sounds a lot like Bruce, because they're both. She's like, I'm not going to tell him I'm sick, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you I'm sick, or whatever. They seem to be maybe similar in that regard. Like,
I'll promise to tell you. I'll promise to tell you.
I'll
but
promise to tell you, and then they all
they
keep it
keep
tight-lipped.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just curious because, I'd never heard any stories about her either. So
Susan was named after her because it's Lotta Sayer. So Susan,
Okay.
Susan Sayer.
Name.
Yeah.
all right, that's interesting. Well, Bruce keeps going with this letter, and he describes the members of his crew, even though this particular crew isn't going to be with him for very long. So, in his own words.
My crew is a good bunch of men. I probably won't keep them now the way things look. They've been together before I got them, and so I believe they'll go across soon with some other pilot. I've trained them, as I understand it. Each pilot trains 2 crews, sometimes 3 and 4. There have been a few alterations in the crew I started with, but here's a general description of each that are with me now. Navigator, Bill Nelson, graduated from Stanford. His home is in Fresno. A tall, lanky, slightly bald fellow with a swell personality. Bombardier, Walter Bond, home in Seattle, Washington. He's a young fellow, 22, and very good looking. Co-pilot, E.H. Stevens from Colorado, likes to hunt, and that's all we talk about. He's 26 and married. The other 2 officers, Nelson and Bond, are single. First engineer, John Cook, blonde-haired kid, slow-talking but a good head. Arizona, New Mexico, I believe, is his home. Second engineer, a fellow about 35 years old. Doesn't say much, but he's from Pennsylvania. His name is H. Virginie. First radio man, Evans, 18-year-old, short, red face and freckles. Second radio man, Hunt, also a young and good man. Waist gunner Charles and tail gunner Pileski are 2 of a kind. Both are tough and look like ex-prize fighters. Charles has a cauliflower ear and a mess of a nose, but he said he never fought in a ring. They both can really tear up a target with their 50s.
I love how he describes all these characters. They're like in a list. I know it's hard to see on a podcast, but you can see them in the letter. He writes them like this too. They're like in a little list, and he's like giving a starting lineup of his crew or whatever. Yeah. When he gets his permanent crew, the one that he does end up going overseas with, we have lots of pictures of them, and so we'll try when he brings, and he will bring them up in letters and kind of talk about his permanent crew like this too. So we'll try to find some pictures that go with them, but I don't think we have any pictures of this crew because they're not with him for very long. So let's keep going, and we'll finish this letter in his own words.
There are a lot of guns on this ship, and when you're at battle stations, every man has a gun except the co-pilot and myself. Some even have 2. Top turret is manned by the first engineer, and it has twin 50s on it. Ball turret is manned by assistant radio chief. It has 2. Also, the tail gunner has twins. Besides this, there are other secret guns on the ship that I can't tell you about. Guns aren't the only secrets about this ship by a long shot. Someday I'll be able to tell you all about them. Tell Kitty thanks for the note, and that I know how busy she is. Tell her I'll as soon as I get a chance to give her a girdle squeeze in person. I hope. Well, see, tell her I'll soon get a chance to give her a girdle squeeze in person. I hope. I should write to Jim, too. Last time was at Douglas. I'll do it tomorrow. All of my love and prayers, your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. Bet the wings look swell on you, Dad and Dad.
Girdle squeeze. Please tell me what this is.
It's just a hug. It just means he's going to hug her, like a girdle hugs people.
This is so weird.
Such
a strange
after I
way to
did
say
rum
it.
crowd, I did girdle squeeze too, but I didn't have any.
So did I, but so did I. I've done it several times because Annie was thinking, her mind was a little bit in the gutter, but I was like, okay.
It's a very odd way to phrase giving someone a hug, is all I'm saying. This is a 1940s slang, but
So he's just
I thought it was weird.
feeling a little
Down at the museum, they thought it was a tight hug.
yeah,
Very
Like a
tight.
girdle.
like a bear hug,
Sure.
a bear hug.
Yeah, a
we
bear
we
hug.
would say a bear
Okay.
hug.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's fine, I guess. It's just weird. But it's cute that he sent the wings home.
How many girdles in your wardrobe? maybe that's what's throwing you, the girdle squeeze.
Maybe. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I bet the wings look swell on you and Dad. That's cute. So he must have sent them home.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Yeah.
We still have those somewhere?
Yep.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
you guys got them. We got a picture.
All
of 'em.
right.
Yeah, I got it
no,
back.
that's good. Well, we should probably end this on girdle squeeze. Thank you for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.